So this is the last part of the satellite manufacturing panel. We have two very famous consultants from the industry. And maybe you have read your report, their reports and analysis, those kind of things. And I'd like to discuss a little bit in an interactive way how you guys think about the manufacturing market today. It was a little bit undigested conversation in the past two panels, I regret, but mainly because the time was short. But I guess, first of all, I think satellite market is growing, right? Including LEO and GEO, everything. I think industry reports I see in the next 10 years, market is growing mainly because of a LEO satellite market growing, not GEO, right? What do you think about distinction between LEO market future and GEO market future? Of course, everyone talks about multi-orbit thing, so GEO never disappears, I guess, but is GEO market recovering to the kind of situation of like 10, 15 years ago, like 25 a year? Is LEO market really surviving with the current pace? Is there any demand to support that kind of, infrastructure growth? What's your feeling?
It's a pleasure to be here, and excellent questions all.
Maybe my microphone is a little bit...
Am I on?
No, I don't think so.
How about this one? Lovely. So certainly looking at the satellite market overall, we're seeing growth. Let's talk about GEO. We heard from Astranis, we heard from, there are multiple companies seeking to build smaller GEO satellites. What appears to be happening there largely is that they are substituting for bigger, more expensive GEO satellites, meaning they're not enabling new market segments. So whether you're a reseller that now wants your own small satellite, or whether you want to ensure that you retain your orbital slot, small GEO satellites are attractive. So I think that in terms of individual companies, there is growth. In terms of that subsegment, there is growth, but that's not contributing to overall growth. And we continue to see the relatively slow erosion of the video market. So in terms of large GEO satellites, I don't see a return to the glory days of the past. I do think there are two interesting areas, three really, that we've touched on so far today. One is national security and related applications. Two is perhaps ISAM-related capabilities where companies evolve in that direction. And three, again, perhaps, is whether those much vaunted hybrid architectures result in learning that enables new market segments. I don't know what those are. And the other point I'll make is we're seeing LEO satellites erode the managed services markets that has been a very key part of the GEO ecosystem recently.
So the reason why you said the smaller spacecraft, GEO spacecraft, might have a remained market or some growth as a sub-market of GEO, is that because customers are CapEx conscious, or customers are kind of capacity conscious? What I mean is that I did be touched on this during the panel, but many customers want, for example, like DTH transponders capacity does not disappear completely in this market, right? So operators might want some capacity for traditional DTH service kind of thing together with the KU-KA broadband digital, but as someone said, they have to go to two different satellites. That's not the best way to go. Is that kind of reason?
Certainly I agree. We're not going to see DTH capacity disappear, but we're seeing continued erosion, and we don't really know where that ends. I would argue that's a technology, almost a technology issue. I think the way I think of small geo satellites is they're a tool, they're the mechanism by which the market is right-sizing itself in many respects. Although I would expect, with all due respect to my colleague from Australis, to see those satellites get larger and larger over time, because that is what satellites do.
May happen to Leo as well, certainly. I mean, coming to geo and agreeing essentially what Carissa said, if I have to say two things. To invest, you don't like about uncharted future. So if you invest in a 10, 15 years asset, you want to have visibility, certainty, etc. As soon as you have uncertainties, then it's a difficult equation to make an investment decision. So, and we are in this time now. First, it's not so easy to get a geo now. If you want to have one in 2 or 3 years, good luck with that. And if you think about the longer term, how future my markets are, where I might share about either broadcast but also data, it's difficult. So for me, outside certainly of still requirement and sovereignty, the big question mark for geo is how seamless multi-orbit can really be within a few years. Can you switch by a millisecond? Can you manage application layers, etc., in a dynamic manner? If you're really able to do that by 2030, maybe, whatever time frame, then you have a new case for geo in the future decades. So that's all a question of how this could work and what it means. Instead of having a gateway on the ground, maybe you have your geo on the sky being part of your sovereignty equation. So that's one. But certainly we're not talking about growth at the moment in terms of volume, and glory days may be over, or maybe there will be future glory days, but for completely different assets and architectures years away because traffic keeps growing. So, but certainly not super short term. And for Leo, and maybe pass the ball back to Carissa, well, yes, Leo is getting bigger, but Leo goes from CubeSats to whatever fancy government-driven assets we're talking about. So there is growth there, but as well, it's both apples and oranges. You need to look at the market in pretty much in detail to see where it's heading.
And to follow up on the Leo question, we're in the midst of a giant experiment on LEO satellites. On the commercial side, we have massive constellations that are driving global launch rates, driving manufacturing, really in some respects driving the industry, and their ability to perform is as yet unknown. Now, there are some very positive indications, but we've also seen some challenges in terms of capacity constraints. So, and the other experiment with regard to LEO we're in the midst of, particularly driven by the US and its very large national security budget, is a transformation of defense architectures to focus on LEO capabilities for resilience. And that is a very significant experiment.
So, is the same?
No, sorry, no, but just for, I mean, if you look at the reality of the biggest part of the LEO manufacturing activity in recent years, one part is vertical integration for a part. Good part of that capability has been built and is now coming to the commercial market. And so the future is also dependent on the success of service delivery and consumption of the services. And the other part, and I would agree, is still very much driven by government, defense or civilian. SDA in the US is a kingmaker. I mean, we can talk US government at large, but if you look at volume, procurement for a set of especially new organizations building small satellites, who has been the biggest buyer in recent years has been SDA in the US. So, and the question, I believe, there is growth in the market, but we will reach a critical size and sustainable manufacturing activity in the next 2 to 3 years will also be an important milestone to pass to just see what the industry really looks like within just a few years.
And SDA is also an experiment. That's not a well-institutionalized organization.
But, I kind of agree to you guys. Actually, real manufacturing market status a little bit, I think, deceiving a little bit because SpaceX and Amazon build their satellites by themselves. So excluding those kind of numbers of spacecraft, probably size is not that big. And probably the biggest customer becomes SDA.
Absolutely, and it raises the question, I think, of the economics of satellite manufacturing, and Pat Cohn referred to this. Do you need to think about integration in order to close a business case? So when you talk about growth and where the growth is, I think we have to ask the question, is growth related to a restructuring of the industry to reflect, it's always been a pyramid, right? The smaller top is the hardware, the larger bottom is services, and maybe that integration is necessary for most individual businesses.
I think satellite manufacturers learned from their failures in Global Star, Iridium, Skybridge, whatever.
Teledesic.
Global, Teledesic, yeah.
I remember.
And I think everyone wanted to go to service, but everyone failed. And it looks like they are not going back to service business so easily now. So they have to be boxed into the manufacturing field without having a new areas. Is that kind of thing? Or no?
No, but we'll see where the next phase is. Honestly, I'm still pretty optimistic. First, there are the mega constellations. Okay, the world will not want a monopoly. That's my personal opinion, but that's an opinion I have, certainly. And the second, if we look at remote sensing, IoT, some of the other capabilities, well, as any innovation industry, there will be failures in the industry. That's the name of the game. Many people invest. Some are great successes. Some are nice successes. Some are failures. And that's it. And there will be also some consolidation, either driven by incumbent industrial players for some part or just between smaller organizations themselves. But there is still, what we see is also diversification in hybrid models. And I believe in terms of resilience, I mean, we had Rocket Lab speaking on the previous session about, okay, maybe it's about launchers, equipment, reselling, in industry, satellite manufacturing and assets. I mean, in the past, even some big incumbents, and Airbus was in service delivery, in system supplies, in satellite manufacturing, etc. So I think having resilience and volume, there is demand in several different parts of the world of different sizes for programs. There are some companies, I could mention ISI among others, they are selling data, they are making like agreement to have a satellite or virtual operator in one country established. So there will be several ways to enter the market, or the concepts, such as the one displayed before by Love Orbital, etc., of capability as a service with different flavors of it. So I think right now the market is a bit looking for itself. There is one recipe for manufacturing, but clearly as well, yes, behind the mega constellation, the market is a relatively limited size, especially for CubeSats. So everyone is trying to grow to bigger assets, maybe fewer, but assets carrying more value in the manufacturing process. And as well, some countries will just want to have a national champion, especially at least Japan, Korea, I'm sure. Some countries in Europe fighting against each other to have a national champion locally, etc.
Two notes to follow on. Absolutely, I think that the need for national systems, which is very much connected to national security objectives, is strong. It's getting stronger as we see the defense postures of countries in Europe shift, of Japan shift. So that certainly contributes to a diversity of providers. To Pat Combs' point, remote sensing is interesting in terms of potential for optimism. The initial thesis for most of the venture-funded remote sensing firms was that they would see massive growth by tapping into new industrial and potentially consumer markets. really new industrial markets. And that has not happened. We've seen expanded agricultural markets, for example. We've seen expanded government use. But there still is, I think, potential for the realization of that investment thesis, which would drive revenue growth and also drive manufacturing. There's no time limit on that. So we're not done. It doesn't mean it won't happen. However, it hasn't happened yet, and it's proven more challenging than envisioned.
So it's rumored that Thales and Airbus might combine their businesses. I see Legacy buying new space, like Lockheed buying Terran, Boeing buying Millennium, those kind of things. Do you think this kind of trend will continue for a while to really adjust the manufacturing market?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just big legacy firms buying venture-funded firms. Venture-funded firms are buying each other, merging with one another. We're going to see a significant number of failures in the next several years without action. That action
failures means failure in
company failures,
financially or
company failures, financial failures,
okay.
Not technical failures, company failures. Without action, that action might be mergers and acquisitions. That action is likely to be government efforts to sustain capability, to maintain weak points in the supply chain, to have multiple providers. We're seeing companies outside the U.S. seek to tap into that U.S. defense market through a variety of mechanisms, including AUKUS, which is attractive for UK and Australian companies. So that's almost, not only will it continue, I think it's going to be a defining trend of the next couple of years.
But I think
without weighing in on Airbus and Thales, which
not just about space, but in any innovative industry, you have a number of new players, and you have some of the established organization possibly consolidating. If you look at this industry or in connectivity, we've seen already quite a number of mergers at the level of satellite operators and some in service layer. You had, Viasat and Inmarsat coming together, SES, Intelsat, etc. All of them mentioned that they may optimize their capex and so forth. So we talked about the demand for GEO. So out of that, can it make sense for satellite manufacturers to consider what is the right size? How many of them is a rationale for consolidation? First, globally speaking, aerospace and defense, there's been consolidation in the US industry for quite some years in different places, not just driven by space interest, but there has been, while new players were coming in. Looking at Europe, well, there's been these rumors, points about potential merger, more or less, every 10 years, but in the past it was more when there was a low cycle in geo-manufacturing with the expectation it would go back up after some time. Right now, the difference is if the lower volume in geo is structural, that's another strategic question whether you can keep two capabilities, one next to the other in the long run. The answer may be no from a structural standpoint. In that case, okay, maybe there is a rationale for consolidation, understanding you will not have tons of options for certain satellite procurement in Europe, and at the same time, you need to invest in LEO. So is there more of a rationale than there was in the past? Yes. Is it always complicated because of politics, industrial, strategic aspects? For sure, yes, as well.
So I think I'm coming to the time, but I should not neglect completely about the questions. Let's only touch the second one. So satellites clients only really care about price, e.g. data megabit per second per month, right? Today, basically, it says almost impossible for large or small satellite to close a business case. Agree or disagree? That's the first question. And if you agree, what do you think will happen? That's my question I'm adding. That's the last question to you guys.
Great question. So, no, but I think we have had a lot of discussion. So I think relative to the market, is it easy or even possible to match the cost of depends what we call mega constellation, but optimized volume of thousands to dozens of satellites being manufactured, etc., etc. Yeah, could be difficult to do that. Is it possible to match the price points of LEO constellations that could be in the hundreds? Possibly yes, depending on what we call the LEO, so NGSO at least. So that depends. But that's where as well, coming back to my point that the future is about multi-orbit, or the ability to really make it work, because in that case what you offer to the client is kind of a complete capability of a certain price point and with certain service features. And in that case, if you mix all of it in a traffic portfolio, you may get close enough based on certain other interests you have. So that all depends. If the name of the game is through a geo, difficult.
Very quickly, neither Starlink nor Kuiper went through what we would think of as a traditional financing process. Those are leap of faith investments in some ways. So I think it's a bit of an unfair comparison with a more traditional or conventional business model.
Well, I think we talked about a pretty much, I think, a challenging part of the industry, but I guess a lot of upside as well and good things as well that we can hope for. So let's catch up next year with any change from this year. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much.